Hello, everybody. Today, I have a very special guest in the channel, Tonev, and he's gonna share with us all the details about how he landed an amazing, fully remote job on eBay in the middle of the pandemic. So yes, real stories, successful stories I wanna share with you. And hopefully everybody watching this video will learn from the process. So Tony, thank you very much once again for being here. Thank you for your time.
It's my pleasure. Thanks so much.
Do you want to introduce yourself so people can get to know
Yeah,
you?
so I'm a Bulgarian-American digital nomad that I've been a digital nomad for about 3 years. And currently I'm in Estonia. So I'm really enjoying the life here.
The summer there, nice.
Yes,
nice.
the long days.
Yeah, and long working hours also, because you recently landed a fully remote job. When was it, 1 month ago? Or less?
It's my third week, my third full week.
Third
already.
week. Amazing,
Yeah.
really fresh new job. When did you start searching for remote job? It was already in the middle of the pandemic, right?
Yeah, so I guess it was a few months ago, maybe 2 or 3 months ago I started. So I had a period where I took time off work while I was traveling. I was doing other types of income such as real estate and so on. But before I took off, I was a software engineer. And I kind of reevaluated and I decided I didn't want to go back to being a web developer like I had been before. I wanted to get into machine learning, which is kind of my passion. And so I spent the time off not only kind of reevaluating things and trying out different income streams, but also thinking about how can I educate myself and become worthy of a machine learning engineer role so that I can be qualified when I went back to the workforce to have the job I wanted, not just what I could get.
Mm-hmm. I remember that. You mentioned that to me, that you are studying, you train, you're doing things on your own to learn more, to qualify yourself. That's super important in the process. And when did you start the job searching finally? Did you have clarity that you wanted to land remote jobs, or were you flexible about considering also office jobs?
Yes, that was a hard line for me, as I was only considering remote jobs because I was at a position where I didn't necessarily need a job. I was financially had a cushion where I could spend longer, and if I didn't get a job right away, I wasn't going to be in trouble. So I could be more picky with my requirements. And one of the strict requirements was it has to be remote,
Amazing.
Which of course narrows down the possibilities, but it's important to me.
But it's good when you can choose. So if you start the process with some anticipation and having some savings, you can be more picky and go directly to what you wanted. So I like this strategy. That's good. And when you started applying for jobs, when you finally started the remote work, job searching, did you target one specific kind of job, like only machine learning? Were you flexible about the jobs, or did you want to work for one specific company? So how was the criterion, the initial criterion that you used when you started the job searching?
Yeah, I knew that I wanted to do something with machine learning, AI, data science. There's a lot of different job titles that are kind of semi-overlapping that I found: data scientist, machine learning engineer, data engineer. These sorts of, they have slightly different definitions, but I knew that I wanted something that combined software engineering with like machine learning, AI, and data science. So it was fairly focused, but at the same time, I was open to kind of variation within that.
And within the company, were you targeting one specific company, or no? For the company were open at the beginning?
I was pretty broad in my search. I wanted, as long as it was like a machine learning type of job, then I wasn't so concerned with which company it was. So I applied to a lot of different places, actually.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. And do you think that the fact that you have the dual citizenship helped you in the process of landing a fully remote job?
It definitely did. Yeah, I mean, I'm very lucky because I have two of the best probably citizenships possible. There's US and then European Union as well, Bulgarian. Yes. So when I lived for 2 years in France, and when I was living there, my American friends were jealous of me that I didn't need a visa to work there. And then oftentimes people are jealous of my ability to work in America. I really can't complain about that. Many of the jobs, especially if it's a US company, the first screening call, you talk to them just for 15 minutes to align on, is it even worth doing the interview, like to screen out people that aren't qualified. And the first question is, do you now or will you in the future need sponsorship to work in the US? And if you answer no, then that's it. They end the interview and you're disqualified. So of course, yes, the citizenship is very important if you want to work in the US. Many companies don't sponsor people that don't have already a visa. And even now with Trump, I heard that he stopped the H-1B visa program. So it's even more difficult than before. So it's just really, really tough if you need sponsorship in the US.
Yeah.
It's an unfortunate reality, but yeah, I was very lucky that I already had citizenships. Thanks, Mom and Dad.
Yeah, that was an amazing gift for you, the dual citizenship. Yeah, nice. So you kind of mentioned this initial screen phone call that companies were doing with you, about 15 minutes. Just double check if you meet the minimum requirements and go ahead in the recruitment steps. So could you please walk us through the main steps that you went through in the recruitment process? I mean, I imagine that each company was a little bit different, but in general, I imagine the companies were doing this initial pre-screening, right, over the phone. And then what was happening after that?
So like you said, it's always a little bit different, but generally the way it works is your first call is with a recruiter, and they're non-technical. They're just, finding people that are qualified and checking for very broad things such as, do you have the necessary amount of experience? Are you able to legally work in the country? Things like that. What are your interests? And I'm sure they also are checking like, what's your level of English? If you show up and you're like, I think and they're just gonna be like, no, those sorts of things, just basic things, minimum requirements. And then usually those are not, unless you don't have a visa or something, those calls are just kind of like also to give you information about the company, because they want, it's not just you're trying to sell yourself, they're trying to sell themselves to you as well.
Yeah.
They have to convince you that they're a company that you want to work for. So they're also doing that at the same time.
One quick question. Were they scheduling this call, or the recruiter was just picking up the phone and calling you without letting you know that they were calling, or both things?
Usually it would be scheduled.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Usually, like, for example, they might send me a message on LinkedIn and say, hey, do you have time for a 15-minute call?
Okay.
When can we schedule it? Or like, do you have time now? And then I'll give my phone number if it's a convenient time, but if it's not, then we'll just schedule it.
So first screening call, 15 minutes, quick chat.
Yeah. And if it's not a very well-known company, like everyone knows what eBay does, for example, but if it's like a startup or something, they'll usually tell you like, look, this is what we do. This is how big our team is. This is how much funding we have, et cetera, all these sorts of details to make sure that it is actually a position you're interested in. They don't want to waste time on someone that's eventually going to turn the position down, right?
Yeah. Okay. And after that, what was normally happening after the initial call?
And then usually it's one of two things. So as for a technical position like I was applying for, they have to assess your technical competence.
And the time that you had to dedicate to it was
those are
5 hours you mentioned, right? Some case you had like 5 hours.
Yeah, that one was unusually long, but I think it said in the instructions it's intended for you to be able to complete it in 1 hour, but they just give you 5 hours just in case.
Okay.
So you don't feel time pressure, I guess. But usually like the phone calls, they will be 45 minutes to an hour, no longer. And if you want, I can talk about specifically the eBay one. So this one was with my technical lead. He's a data scientist. And so because it was machine learning engineer, it was split into 2 parts. The first part was software engineering, and the second part was data science.
Okay.
The software engineering one was just like the ones I described earlier, which are, given
practical
something
test.
given a list and the largest number, find, something about the list.
Don't need to go too deep. I won't understand that.
Yeah. But some kind of technical problem that you can solve and takes a little bit of creativity and problem solving skills. That's what they're testing for.
Okay.
And then, so that was the first kind of 30 minutes. And then the second 30 minutes was more theoretical data science problems, like what would you do in this situation? Talk about a project you did in the past, and what are the problems you ran into and how did you solve them? Those sorts of questions to make sure that you have an understanding of the theoretical basis and kind of, of data science as a whole. So it was 50-50 in that case.
So this was with the person that was going to be your future team leader, your future manager. So it was not only you doing the test, it was an interview with a practical
It was
test.
an interview. Yeah, so it's a technical interview, they call them. So they ask you a technical question, you have to solve it on the spot, and they ask you questions and feedback.
Okay. And what happened after that? After this technical?
And so actually it was a funny story. What happened after that is they said, okay, we're going to schedule your interview with the manager. And then the day of my interview with the manager, I get an email from the recruiter that says, they've canceled your interview with the manager. I'm like, what? What went wrong? what's
Why?
going on? I don't know what happened. I didn't do anything wrong. And so, and so I guess this is kind of a unique experience of the remote worker. I had mentioned to the technical interviewer that I'm in Mexico, and it really shouldn't matter because it's a remote position and I'm a US citizen, so it shouldn't matter where I am. But I had mentioned that I'm in Mexico, and he told the manager, and then the manager thought, oh, he's in Mexico. He can't get a laptop. He has to be in the US to get a laptop. So, okay, I guess we disqualify him.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was really disappointing because I thought that I was just disqualified. And of course, I always recommend be honest about where you are and things like that. You're not going to be able to get away with like, they think I'm in America, but I'm really in Mexico type of thing. So I was very upfront about it. I said, look, I'm in Mexico, but you know, I'm a US citizen. I can come to the US if you need me to the office to you know, meet everybody for a while, but eventually I wanted to be remote.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing about COVID is it actually made it easier in some ways, because many of the positions that previously I would have disqualified because I'm only looking for remote positions, well, now everyone's remote.
They are more open to offer more remote positions. Yeah.
All the tech companies
But
are
his manager almost
Uh-huh.
removed you from the process because he was
Yes.
in Mexico. And how did you
Yes.
find out that they almost disqualified you because of that? How did you get to know these details?
So I was going through a recruiting company, a third-party consulting recruiting company, and I was communicating with them, and they told me, and I was very disappointed, and I followed up, you know, politely, like, can you please tell me why? I don't understand. And they told me they had concerns that I'm in Mexico, and their understanding was nobody can travel because of COVID.
Yeah.
And so we can't send you a laptop to Mexico, therefore you're disqualified. Luckily, the misunderstanding was cleared up when I told them, actually, I can come to the US. I'm a US citizen. US citizens are allowed to come to the US, so I can book the next flight, no problem.
Wow.
And when that was cleared up, they were like, okay, we rebooked your interview.
Amazing. I love that because you didn't accept the no, you're disqualified. You went a bit further. So you asked for more details and all of that. And that made a big difference because if you have only accepted the no, you wouldn't even, you know, be here talking about it today. So.
I guess that's true. Yeah. I mean, even if I get rejected, and of course, if you apply for jobs, you're always going to go through a lot of rejections before you get to an offer. Yeah. I always ask for feedback just to know, like, what is the reason? I want to know so I can
how many
improve.
times you get a feedback? Very few. Almost zero.
Actually, sometimes they do. I mean, they're often not very specific, but they will say something like, well, it was not technically strong enough or something like that. They won't tell you like the very specific reason, but they'll give you something. Yeah. So, you know, I always like
if you don't ask, you never know. Yeah. And in this case, asking why you were disqualified made a whole difference. So that's amazing.
That's true. That is very true.
Really nice.
And so then we were able to clear up the misunderstanding. I told them, look, if you want to ship a laptop to me in the US, my family's in Houston. I can go to see my family for a week. I can get the laptop, no problem. They're like, oh, okay. Rescheduled the interview.
With the future manager. This next interview.
Yes. And then actually it turned out, I thought it would be just the manager, but it turned out it was another technical team member. She wasn't a programmer, but she was a linguist. And so because the job is for the eBay technical support chatbot, she was like one of the conversation designers as a linguist, kind of cool job. Wow. So I talked to her because I would be working closely with her as well. And then talked to the manager, and the manager, he didn't have very many questions for me, honestly. He, I guess, probably relies more on the technical people to make the decision. And for me, it was just sort of like, hey, how are you doing? You know, can you come to the US for the laptop?
Just double check. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, you can? Okay, then it's fine. So actually that was a short one.
Okay. How long did it last? 30 minutes?
I think, I think the linguist was 30 minutes. The manager was 30 minutes, but I think we even finished early. So.
Okay. So there was the third step in the process, right?
It was the same. It was at the same time. Those two were. Actually, the recruiter didn't even know that it would be two different people. They thought it would be just the manager, but it was.
So even big companies, there is some miscommunication in the process, right? We could see that.
Yeah. So it was the second interview, but two different people.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And then after that, was that?
And then after that, they made me an offer. So it was funny because it was. You know, I wasn't putting all my eggs in one basket, even though I thought it went well. I was continuing to interview. And so I was actually interviewing with Google
Wow, amazing.
on the day that I was, so I'd gone to the initial phone screen, and then Google does what's called a virtual onsite, where they do 5 interviews in one day, 5 45-minute long interviews in one day. So it's very intense. I mean, all the big tech companies, they're identical. Like Google, Amazon, Facebook, they all do these sort of like on-sites. And now because of COVID, they don't do them on-site anymore. But normally, like I've done these before where they fly you there, they put you up in a nice hotel, they buy you lunch, and you're there all day interviewing.
They cover all the expenses for that.
Yeah, so they pay very nicely. And then, then it's a full day interview, but because of the pandemic, now they're doing all these virtually. So it's a total like oxymoron virtual on-site.
So you're doing the 5 hours interview for Google the day that eBay contacted you to make the offer.
And then during that like intense, very like thinking hard, my brain is like burned out. I'm like, trying to focus. I'm getting a call from the recruiter for feedback about eBay. And I'm like, I have to ignore this right now. And then, after I finished, I called them back and they're like, oh, we have good news. They made an offer. So it was a big roller coaster of
intense day. Yeah. But I like the fact that you didn't put all the eggs in one basket, as you said, because you were still waiting for the eBay answer, and you're moving ahead with other great companies like Google. So I think that's an important strategy also to diversify, because until you get the yes, the confirmation, it's a no, right? It's only a yes when they say. In the meantime, you were this close to lose it because you were in Mexico. Look how unfair is the situation. But sometimes we lose job offers just for a small detail. So it's nice that you were diversifying things.
Yeah, and even I was afraid to change my status on LinkedIn of working until I received my first paycheck. Because I was like, I don't want to jinx it. I've heard so many stories of people like they were given an offer and then a few weeks later it was retracted because of the pandemic, and it was like, wow. I was just very nervous until it was really starting because of those stories. But luckily, they gave me the offer after we knew it was a pandemic already, so it wasn't a surprise. Okay. It wasn't in the early part of it.
Amazing.
But it's true. You gave me some really good advice earlier before, because I was kind of holding out on a maybe, yes, we're going to give you a job, but just a little later, just next week, always. And I was believing them for a long time. And you're absolutely right that until it's very official, until you have a contract,
it's nothing. Until it happens, there is nothing. It's just air. I mean, there is a lot of
They were just wasting my time. They wasted a lot of my time.
Yeah.
But when I started looking again more seriously, then that's how I found the real job.
Yeah, and you keep moving, like until you get a yes, and hopefully you can also choose if you have 2 offers at the same time. So you were this close to have maybe an offer from Google. So yeah.
Well, so the funny thing is, what happened with that is they told me, so Google is notorious for being very slow in their hiring process.
Okay.
Everyone knows it, they know it. And so actually the feedback was positive from Google, but I knew that it would take weeks, maybe even over a month. They said it can take, 4 to 6 weeks for the Google hiring process. And the eBay one, this is a contract role. This is a 6-month contract.
Okay.
So typically they want an answer right away, because it's not like with a contract, it's easier to come and go, and it's not like such a long commitment. It's only 6 months.
Yeah.
So basically they wanted an answer right away. And of course I had to say yes, like it's a great job. It's a machine learning engineer. It's remote. It's everything I wanted. And I couldn't possibly like turn down a definite for a possibility,
Exactly.
It just wouldn't make sense.
Yeah.
But I mean, the funny thing is with Google, like they told me, well, actually, if in 6 months, when your contract is up, then maybe
you can come back.
We can come back. So you never know. It would be great to also have that lined up.
Exactly. And if you cause a good impression, a good impact on this initial 5 hours interview, definitely they want to have you in their database and consider you for future positions, because actually you're going to be more qualified after 6 months working in eBay. So big companies, they like people who comes from other big companies because they know they received training, they got a good experience. So it's not a big no. It's like, okay, it's a no now. But they already said, let's talk again in 6 months. And even if they haven't said, I was going to tell you in 6 months, once you finish your contract, go back to them and say, hey, I'm available now. My curriculum is even better. I improved my experience. So that help you in the process. And Tony, now looking back through, all those months of applying, doing job interviews and all of that, would you do something different? You kind of said that about don't put all the eggs in the same basket, don't weigh too much. Any other learning in the process that you would change, or would you do everything quite similar because it was successful at the end, right?
Yeah. I think a big tip that I would give anybody that's is starting the job search or is in the job search right now is every day I was doing things that were bringing me closer to my goal, and for example, for me, I realized that I needed to build an online presence that's going to showcase who I am and how qualified I am. So
then you start posting articles and more of the
yeah, exactly. So a resume is not enough in today's world to get hired. A resume is pretty old school, Right now, your resume should be digital. It should be a composite of all your online presence, which includes your LinkedIn. I like to post articles on Medium. Your portfolio. If you're looking for a technical role, what projects have you done? And if you can't find a job now, then you should be working on projects without getting paid, but you're gaining experience. And so I did a volunteer project that, no, I didn't get paid from that, but at the same time, they're going to ask you questions in the interview and you're going to need something technical to talk about
some experience.
That showcases exactly. And so that really helped me to have something to talk about. Like, what did you do? How did you handle these situations? What did you learn?
Any experience is valid. A volunteer, a non-paid project. It is work that you're doing. And it's not only about money, it's about learning and what you can bring to the table during the job interview, the experience you have.
So in the end, I was applying for plenty of jobs, and I found that many of the jobs that I applied for, they probably have 50 applicants per day. They don't have time to even look at all the applications. It's much better if they find you. So that's why you have to make yourself a magnet rather than trying to always apply, because you may not get a response. But if you have a presence like on your LinkedIn, on your Medium, on whatever social network
people will come to you
is relevant to your field, is the people that are looking to hire are on. Find where they hang out and make yourself look qualified on those platforms, then that's how it'll work.
Yeah, I love that. Make yourself relevant to your field. You're going to attract the right people to your profile. And now I know that you're in Estonia and eBay and your colleagues are in the US and you have a 10 hours difference, right?
Yeah, they're in San Jose, California, so it's 10 hours.
Wow. So how are you handling the different time zone? How are you doing that? Managing?
I love it, actually. It's a benefit and I'm no stranger to working with different time zones as well, because for 2 years I worked in Salesforce.com and they were in San Francisco. I was in Paris, so that's 9 hours. Okay. Almost the same. So in the beginning, especially since I was just starting, I wanted to make sure I have maximal overlap for my colleagues in case somebody messaged me, in case they wanted something from me. So I shift my time, and for example, I'll start working 5 p.m. until 1 a.m. So actually that works really well for me because I'm a night owl. I don't feel very productive in the morning. I'm not able to think yet before, say, 12 o'clock at least. And then like 12 to 5 is just my time. I can go for a walk when it's sunny and warm. I can go ice skating, go to the movies, whatever.
Perfect.
Yeah, while the weather is good, enjoy the good weather, and then work when it gets cold here. So actually, why aren't more people doing that? It's much better for the weather. And I'm lucky because my girlfriend also has flexible work hours, so we can work at the same time.
That's amazing. I love it. But I'm very happy. I participate somehow in the process. So glad to see that you achieved this initial goal. And I think there is more to come after the 6 months contract. Let's see if they're going to renew it or not, if there is this chance. Otherwise, the Google is already waiting for you. One door open there. And everything you learn in the process, the job search strategy and how to sell yourself out there, how to be someone that people have as a reference in the area that you want to work for. So all those things are very important. So thank you very much for sharing all of that. I'm sure people could pick a lot of interesting things.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.